this video, we're going to be going over the difference between investor-owned, tenant-occupied, and a owner-occupied property. The differences, the benefits, the downsides, the advantages, and let's get started. So this is Steve. I'm a real estate agent here in Central Massachusetts, and what I'm going to do here is go over the advantages, disadvantages of buying property with a specific situation. So either tenant occupied, investor occupied, or owner occupied. Please make sure to subscribe, drop a comment below. So if you're newer to this channel, I know I have a playlist here with all multifamily investing, how to get started on your first deal. If you haven't checked it out, just give it a shot and it'll give you all deal analysis, things of that nature. So today, first, we're going to be looking over buying tenant occupied property. So what is this? This means if you're buying a 3-family or a duplex and both you're inheriting 2 tenants, what does that look like? So when you inherit tenants, they're either going to have a verbal agreement or a written document, which is a written lease or a tenant at will agreement. This states how long or what they were currently paying, if they have security, if they have last month's rent, and the termination date of that lease. So I'd recommend if you are purchasing, you want to have a copy of the lease or the agreement at closing. So when you turn over the building, you are able to see the agreements in hand. The good news is you may have good long-term tenants on hand, and they might be under market rents, which is a situation you want to take case by case. Now, a downside is it is harder to get work done in the property if it is tenant occupied. They've been there a while, they're paying way below market. You got to make the decision of, do you keep them there until the next turnover, or do you want to increase the rent slowly over time? It's a decision you want to make in regards to what's best for me in my scenario. Am I comfortable holding on to tenants for a little bit or putting a new lease in place? Because you definitely want to put a new agreement in place when inheriting tenants. Now, if you are looking at an owner-occupied property, this can either be a single family or it could be a multifamily. If it is owner-occupied, it tends to be in much better condition than if it's a pure investment property. That just is because if it's owner-occupied, they tend to take better care of the property. They know a lot about the property, and it's smart to get a seller's disclosure if they have it. That's going to give you all the information they know to be true about the property. It could be easier to possibly get an offer accepted if you are first on the table for an owner-occupied property, if you're able to relate the information to the seller agent and you show you're very interested in the property. Some people, you've seen them write letters and things of that nature of why this will be perfect for them if they're buying their first property or their next property, or they're local investors in the neighborhood, they're looking to add it to their portfolio, they'll take care of the property. Sometimes that's important to the seller, but you want to find is it the money, their bottom line. Find the seller's motivation if you can to get a better angle on how you want to present your offer to that seller. But sometimes it is a negative, and the downside is they're very emotionally attached to the home and they started the listing price way too high. And it's very hard to get them down to the market value price of what the property's worth, which means it's very hard to get an offer accepted. Let's just say it's $400 is the value they have as an asking price, but the market value is gonna be $375. That's a huge difference, and they might feel disrespected if you put an offer at $375. But again, it is more difficult to work with someone who's been there, let's say 30 or 40 years. Moving's very stressful, and they're in a tough financial spot where they need that additional $25,000, but the market might not bear that. So don't feel too bad if you're putting in that offer and it's low, because at the end of the day, if your numbers work out to that, that's no problem putting that offer in. And also, when you do the walkthrough on an owner-occupied property, typically they will not have the property professionally cleaned before you move into the property. It's not a major deal, but it's something to consider. It's supposed to be broom swept clean, and it's stressful to move. So they may also leave items behind, and you can decide if you want to not close on that day, or you can negotiate it out if they have a dumpster on the property and you can use it, and you need to know when the dumpster's leaving because you need to make sure you close on time. So it's something minor, but it's something to consider. They might leave random items behind. I know in my shed they left a bunch of random wood pellets, and they just had a bunch of random stuff in there because they did a few things, but I didn't think it was a big deal, but some people might if they're not used to that. Next is an investor-owned property. So this is primarily for a single-family residence, or it could be a multifamily where they flipped the property, they bought it at one point, and they're trying to sell the property within 12 months of purchasing it. Typically less, typically 6. 6 is a better benchmark, but that just means they put all new systems in the property. They redid the flooring, paint, new kitchen, new bathroom, so it's essentially move-in ready. And there's really no downside of buying a property like this unless it's really hard to force equity. Because they forced all the equity. They increased the market value as much as they could before they sell it. So if you are looking to hold on to the property long term, it's likely not a bad thing because you won't have a lot of CapEx expenses immediately. And keep in mind, if it's a flipped property, the more times that property is vacant, the less profit that seller's gonna make. So they might just try a certain price, and it might be easier to get a deal done with them just because they try a little bit high, but they know if you have a clean offer, clean financing, that you're gonna get the job done. They might work with you on the offer. But typically, it's hard to negotiate up front too if they have a set price, if they've ran comps, and they wanna sit at a certain price for a while. It might be harder to get an offer accepted on that property. Hopefully this was helpful and you see the clear advantages of either buying tenant occupied and you know what to look for in regards to leases and agreements. And also you can see the advantages of buying owner occupied. If they've held the property for a while, it's likely in better condition. And finally, investor occupied, it's likely essentially move-in ready. But they did max out the value on the property, so you're gonna have less CapEx immediately. Thanks for sticking with me on this video. Hopefully you found it helpful. Any questions at all, drop a comment, send me an email, and we will stay in touch.